Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah. So I've been asked two questions, excellent questions. One brother asked me, like as a beginner, and we had a small conversation. He's been Muslim for years, and he's read his Quran a numerous amount of times, right? And he listened to one of my old videos, maybe, I don't know, it's probably close to 2 years ago. But he was saying he was listening to one of my old videos where I was saying and explaining how there's a difference between reading the Quran and studying the Quran. And I spoke on it very briefly. I remember saying some things about, like, let's say, we'll just say a comic book. When people read comic books or people read novels, are you studying those books? No, you're reading them. And sometimes we read our Quran often. But does that mean you're studying the Quran? So he asked me to give him a couple of tips. And I told him when I get to where I'm going, I'll do a short video and actually show something. And I picked one subject matter from the Quran, and it's intoxicants. And we're going to show how to study the Quran just by using your Quran, right? And then the second question, the brother asked me a couple of days ago, and I'm glad he asked this because it's concerning that Bible. He said, and I'm going to read some of it. He basically saying, he not asking this to cause any confusion, but it's regarding one of the holy books which Muslims often overlook, which is the Zabur. And I think it is one of the purest revelations compared to the Torah and the Injil. And he asked me, why do I think Muslims don't practice Psalms 150? And he's like, I have a problem with this because I grew up in the church, and this type of music is very holy. Even though sometimes they sing about Isa as being Allah, which is wrong. Okay? So we're gonna try to discuss both of those briefly. So with the brother, and showing certain ways that how to study your Quran. And this is on a basic general level. Anybody could do it, a new Muslim can do it. One Quran that's excellent for studying in English is the clear Quran, because it's thematic and it gives each ayat a theme. So above the ayats, it gives you the theme as like, okay, this is a favor from Allah. This is a punishment from Allah. These ayats are about the hypocrites. And it's excellent for studying on a basic level, on a general level, not just reading, but studying. And before the chapters, at the beginning of the chapters, it gives you a little brief summary and a little backdrop about the surah and things like that. So, and I'm going to write on here briefly, and it helped me keep my frame of thought. But when you study in the Quran, one thing you should do is learn the difference between surahs from Mecca and Medina. Learn to separate your surahs from Mecca and your surahs from Medina. And you'll start to see especially when you're able to start to delve into the hadith, you will see that they were able to practice Islam one way, and this is also some of the dalil that's used in fiqh, that fiqh should adjust to your region. That's why they say, like, for instance, you have America, and then you have scholars who never been to America, don't really know what's going on a day-to-day basis of America. They can give a general ruling, but they shouldn't issue fatwas because they don't know nothing about the day-to-day life here. So sometimes they're just answering a question based off the little bit of information they given by the person who's asking them, which can be considered a general ruling, but it's technically not a fatwa. So when you know anything about Imam Shafi'i, once he moved to Egypt, he completely changed his madhab and upgraded it and did away with things. He did a lot to it. He changed to a whole entirely different madhab because the landscape was different. And see, some people don't know that, and some people be talking about Shafi'i, fiqh, this and this. They don't know if it's something he got rid of or whatever, but we won't get into that. So once you start to look at your Meccan surahs, and then your Madani surahs, your surahs from Medina, generally your Quran will let you know, or to have a symbol. Sometimes the symbol looks like the Prophet Mosque. That means it's a Medina surah. Or the symbol may look like a cube as the Kaaba. That lets you know it's a Meccan surah if it don't say a surah from Medina or a Meccan. But clear Qurans are thematic, so they give you a lot about it. And you will see some of the changes that they went through in the way that they practice Islam. And some of the rulings and the way things went, right? And some of your Meccan surahs had more of a rhyming pattern because this is the way they eased it in, because a lot of people was into poetry and rhyming style with their stories. Just like if you recite the Al-Fatiha slow, you will notice that it rhymes. But there's plenty of surahs when you know how to recite them and you look at them, they actually rhyme. But anyway, we're going to look at dealing with intoxicants, right? So let's go into, and this is one thing because it'll let you know how long were the Muslims allowed to drink alcohol. Were they allowed to drink alcohol or deal with any form of intoxicants longer, like over half of the deen? So if we say, well, not half of the deen because it's still the deen, but the Rasul prophethood, while the deen was being revealed over a course of 23 years, were they able to drink alcohol over half of that time span? So half of 23 years is what, like 11 and a half years? Were they able to drink alcohol more than 11 years? These are the type of things that I like to know. You know what I'm saying? Because it show you the patience that Allah had, especially when you able to read hadith about funny stories. They wasn't funny, but they funny about where they was intoxicated and did things to one another. You know, bust one of them in the face with a flower pot. You know, a lot of things. So anyway, let's look at a Meccan surah. We're going to go all the way back to Meccan. And this is going to sound funny. This is going to sound funny to some people when I read it to them, because when you know the hadith that go with it, it's almost like intoxicants at one form of time was one of the blessings from Allah. not as in a blessing, but the people indulging in it. And when you look at the hadith, the way it calmed some people when they was in a bad mood or angry. You know, some people was able to deal with intoxicants and have a good time. You know, the forms of beer, how it was good for the digestive system for like someone who was constipated. There's different things about it. And it's funny, a lot of people don't know this, but in the Hanafi madhab, not what's been changed, and some students may say this and that, do you know that they allow it's permissible to drink wine in a Hanafi madhab, liquors, as long as it's from a natural source like honey and things like that? Yeah. How did he come up with that ruling? I don't know. So like, I can start drinking and say, hey, I'm following the Hanafi madhab. Some people, and this is the beauty of it, some people will be like, because they never heard it before or they never read it before, like it's not real. You know what I'm saying? But they may have never, you know, been to the extent of certain things. But yeah, in a madhab, and I can't say the dalil is possibly this Quran ayat, but anyway, let's get into it. So when you go to Surah 16, and I'm using the clear Quran because it is thematic, one of the thematic Qurans that I have, right? So, like I said, for the people who don't have it, how I start off, this is a Meccan chapter, right? Also known as the chapter of blessings. Okay? So anyway, it goes into how the chapter concludes by instructing the prophet to endure patiently and invite all to the way of Allah, invite people to the deen of Islam, right, with wisdom and grace, showing gratitude for Allah for all the blessings. So they kind of put down favors from Allah. So like, look, the fifth favor, the title is, for this ayat, for over ayat number 9, a favor from Allah is the way to Islam, the way of Islam. So the Quran ayat say, it is up on Allah alone to clearly show the straight way. Other ways are deviant. It don't matter if they got a Muslim name. It don't matter if they say they part of Ahlul Sunnah, right? It don't matter if they say they this, they that. No matter the name, no matter the label. If it's other than what Allah said, and other than what is Allah's messenger taught, is deviant. No ifs, ands, buts, or maybes. Allah is saying it. You see what I'm saying? It's deviant. Right? And then Allah says, had He willed, He would have imposed guidance upon everybody, upon all the Muslims. So one of the favors from Allah is that you don't end up on one of these deviant groups, like how I put up on this board the other day for people who seen the video, Quran and Sunnah over everything, right? Seen the video where I put down, after the Rasul, you had this imam who came, and he came up with, this is what I think the Quran mean, and I came up with this. When the Rasul made something clear about that ayat, and it's something that Allah said, these people who changed it, whether it was in belief, whether it was in action, that stuff is deviant. No matter what they call themselves, and Allah makes that clear in the Quran ayat. And if you fortunate to not be up on those people thought processes about something that's clear, but I ain't gonna get too deep into that, man, because everybody ears ain't ready for that. And see, one thing that you will start to find in the deen, some people will make you out to be extreme before they ever admit that they soft. That the weakness is really on them. We not soft, we not weak, you just extreme. But Allah says anything, any other way, no matter what label you, even if your label is Muslim, which will be quick, the Nation of Islam, an African American group, we're extremely quick to say they not Muslim. They on some batil. That's an innovative group, right? But then another group who call themselves Muslims who say stuff just as bad. And we'll say they part of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah because they imam was loved. They just as deviant. You see what I'm saying? But anyway, so continuing on with the same chapter, we're showing that was the 5th favor. So coming over to the 13th favor, where it's talking about the food and the drinks that Allah Azza wa Jal has blessed us with, basically from nature. So look, and keep in mind, this was in Mecca. And there is certainly a lesson for you in the cattle, right? There's a surah, but there's more to it. There's a lesson for you in the cattle, where we give you a drink from its belly, which is the milk that you could drink from the cattle, and we give you the drink from what is in their bellies and between digestive food, right? And blood and pure milk. For those who had to do certain things with the blood, whatever they did with it, not saying they ate it, but from the blood of the cattle and different things, not only just them, because this is referring to bees as well, but from animals, they digestive food, like honey, is something that comes from digestive food from a bee. Some people even basically say it like vegetarian vegans. They say honey is bee vomit. Excuse my language, but from their digestive food. So you get pure milk and you get a pleasant drink, right? Okay, so this is from the cows and the milk. But keep in mind, this surah is the bee. The chapter is the bees. So that's why I'm throwing a part in about the bees also, because it explains all of this. I'm paraphrasing, right? So then it says, ayah 67, and from the fruits of palm trees, dates, right? Date palm trees, the fruits of palm trees, date trees, any fruit, right? And grapevines, you derive intoxicants. So from all the fruits and all the natural things in grapes, y'all making wine, as well as wholesome provisions. You eat it, you eat the fruit, you sell the fruit, you drink the wine, you sell the wine. These are provisions. Surely, and this is a sign for those who understand. Why? Not only was it permissible, it's from amongst the favors of Allah. This was in Mecca. Okay? This was in Mecca. Now, I did another video about 2 videos ago where I was speaking about the way the deen has a system. It really had a natural system of tarbiyah. And when you go to the hadith and like you look at some of the athar of some of the people from the Salaf saying that had Allah Azza wa Jal cut off alcohol right at the very beginning and some of the other things that they lived, they desired, they loved that more than they loved the deen at that time. Some of them would have left Islam. Like right now, you have Muslims that be like, man, I want to be Muslim, man, but not Muslim, but you have people, I want to be Muslim, man, but man, I can't give up that pork and that drinking. You know what I'm saying? Or some people who get told falsities about the Quran or hear about ayats like this, people who grasp this ayat and it didn't go over their head, but some people who are aware of this ayat, oh no, Allah said intoxicants, man, was a provision. As long as it's from natural fruits. Just like I did a video years ago where I was saying some people think beer don't fall in the categories of intoxicants. Hard liquors don't fall in the categories because they not, although champagnes and all this stuff, anyway, we're not going to get into that. But they feel like it's not a wine. So some people may read this, man, alhamdulillah, man, you could drink. Just don't approach the prayer when you're drunk, which is the next ayat we're going to get to. And I was an individual that fell victim to that before I read the Quran, because I'm a person who became Muslim at the age of 13. You know what I'm saying? And from people who hadn't read the Quran and I hadn't read the Quran, by the time I get an age, 16, 17, I'm indulging like an adult. Because I'm running around with older people. I mean, long as you don't try to pray when you get drunk. And it blew my mind because we didn't pray no way. We didn't make salat. We didn't even know how. But it was some slick stuff to say. I mean, you could drink, you could deal with intoxicants as long as you don't approach the prayer. But I'm saying by people who know these ayats, but they don't know their Quran and they don't know how to study it and they don't know what came about, where these prohibitions came through, they indulge in intoxicants. So this is the beginning. This is in Mecca. Okay? So then when you come into like, and I got some of them marked off. So now, when you come to Surah 4, but not only Surah 4, but some in Surah Baqarah, which is also in Mecca, in Medina. We go to Surah 4, which is a Medina chapter. So, the Rasul was in Mecca for 13 years and 10 in Medina. You come to the Medina Surah, and the Rasul, Allah informs the Rasul through the Quran to inform the believers, O believers, do not approach the prayer while you are intoxicated. Okay? It's still permissible. But now there's an issue because not only are people trying to pray while they drunk, but they leading the prayer for whether it's with their families or other people, and they doing 5 rakats for Fajr because they still drunk. Things like that. Saying things, misreciting because they drunk. So things like this started to happen with the Muslims. And I love reading those athars and those type of hadith because this is letting you know they was drinking, Zach. You doing 5 rakats for Fajr while you leading people? Or you was tipsy. They was getting busy with the alcohol. So now if you think about it, this is in Medina, which you can go and see how long they had been in Medina for this to be revealed. But we know one thing for sure. This has been over 13 years. Because they was in Mecca for a certain amount of time. So they was drinking the whole time they was in Mecca. When they get to Medina, because you have to understand, another key ayat to let you know so much time had passed, because Salat didn't even come down until 11 and a half years. You see what I'm saying? So now once they get to Medina, the drinking is starting to affect the prayers. This is how you learn how to study your Quran. Looking at the rulings, how they was from Mecca to Medina, and then you could see what was abrogated. You could see the tarbiyah, how things was phased out. So it say, "O believers, do not approach the prayer while intoxicated until you are aware of what you say and you're in a state of full, and you're not in a state of full impurity." Whether you done got drunk and, may have had sex and you drunk and pray anyway, or, your mind, you bewildered, so you're not pure because you got to have your right state of mind to be making salat. You need that's a part of your tahara. So let's say you drunk, and you be like, okay, I'm too drunk to pray. Let me go ahead and lay down and sleep this off and sober up. And then once I sober up, I got to make those prayers up. So those prayers had to be made up for some of the Muslims who be too drunk and be too intoxicated on pills, marijuana, on all type of intoxicants. And then they go to sleep it off. And then they don't make their prayers up. So this was in Medina. They was drinking for a long time. Right? So then when you come to like Surah 5, I believe it's ayah number 90, because I ain't got it marked, but I know it's in Surah number 5, right? So Surah number 5, which will let you know, also in Medina. Daki. So, Surah 5, also in Medina, right? So, when you're looking at this timeline, I'm just picking out one issue, right? And then for people who want to try to find the Quran guilty of some contradictions or not being this and that, when you see the way this travels from Mecca to Medina, and you know how to study your Quran and look at issues, evidence, you can't find the Quran guilty of falsehood. Like how you can do with some of these other so-called religious books, right? When you know what you're doing. You know, when your mind right and you truly understand, right? So when you come to Surah 5, and there's a few more ayats about the drinking, but we're going to go to Surah 5. Let me make sure it's ayat number 90. Yeah. So now it says, O believers, intoxicants, gambling, idols, and drawing lots for decisions. And the way they there was several different things that they did. But to give some people kind of an idea of some of the stuff that they would do, like, I had these right here. So let's say these right here aren't all the same size, right? But somebody will hold them like this, right? And then say, who whoever pulled the shortest one, right, got to go kick this lion in the face type stuff, where they would make decisions like that and be like, whoever get the lowest one, the shortest one, and then everybody will pull one, and then when you pull them, you can see this is the shortest one, so whoever get the shortest one got to go be the dummy. Or we both like this girl, let's do rock paper scissors, and whoever rock paper scissors, whoever win that, get the girl. That type of stuff. That's stuff that's similar to like drawing lots. But when you see Allah Azza wa Jal puts intoxicants, gambling, right, idols, and drawing lots for decisions in the same category, that let you know something. And then it says they are all evil works of Shaitan. So all these intoxicants, they come from the Shaitan. But you have some religions that teach you to drink wine because they say it's Jesus' blood. And they say that's from the religion. But continuing on. So shun them so you may be successful. 91. Shaitan plan is to stir up hostility and hatred between you with intoxicants and gambling, and they added to prevent you from remembering Allah and praying. Will you not then abstain? How many people missed prayer because they was drunk or had hangovers? How many people do y'all know that killed, harmed, beat, did something to somebody because they was drunk? Allah tell you this is what Shaitan plan is. And when you look at some of the stories from the Sahaba, why they was allowed to drink, because they was all, we just gonna keep it 100. They was getting busy when they accepted Islam. You know, when you understand some of the histories and some of the things that they did from the dunya before Islam, like burying their daughters alive, they would sit out and get intoxicated around a fire in the desert and this and that, and kick the bobos and this and that, man, and get themselves together so that they could go bury their daughter alive as a baby. This wasn't Muslims, but these was Arab traditions. And they love their alcohol, man. So enough time passed for them to fall in love with the deen. And then enough incidents where one done bust the other one, broke his nose, split his face with a wine jug because they got to arguing while they was drunk. Enough incidents and enough people missing prayer and messing up prayers, enough of them to go, this went on to where they could see this is affecting our Islam. So right at this point is when Allah Azza wa Jal banned the intoxicants. And some of them didn't quit drinking right away. You see what I'm saying? Some of them still had a struggle with it. But they loved Allah and His Messenger. They struggled with it. You know? So sometimes when people accept Islam and they already an overindulger, you might be an alcoholic and you accept Islam. You might be a weed head and you accept Islam. You might be a pill head and accept Islam. yes, we should be lenient with people, but also try to encourage them to wean themselves off of that. You know, Allah Azza wa Jal gave them a sufficient amount of time because the love for the deen, the love for being Muslim, the desire to please Allah Azza wa Jal and get to Jannah has set in their hearts. Some people just live in a bad lifestyle and they in the streets and they fear they may die. They've done some wrong things. They've been to prison too much and they want to change their life, and they know that the Creator is real, but Christianity just doesn't grasp them like that. So they grabbing a hold to the deen, but they still, you'll be amazed at so many Muslims that I've talked to, and their concept of Jannah is still what Christianity has taught them. And that's why a lot of them still be talking about my baby or my nephew or my friend's baby who passed away as a little kid or got hit by a car. And forgive me if I'm mentioning something that people have experienced. Wallahi, I'm not trying to do that. And then they start thinking that they in the sky watching over them. This still is their concept of heaven. A lot of Muslims, a lot of people come to the Deen of Islam and they're not really properly taught about Jannah and Jahannam, the hellfire. They still had the same concepts that they had as Christians. Now, I'm speaking on it this way because I'm easing in to this thing about this Bible with the brother that asked me. You know what I'm saying? And I'm a proof and an evidence guy. But the thing is, so I'm going to use proof and evidence when I get into that, this Bible thing. But to continue, all of that has disappeared from them. The deen, enough time for it to really get in their hearts. Now, the love for the deen is making them get the alcohol up. As before, the love for the alcohol would have made them give the deen up, you see. Now, I'm not giving nobody an excuse. You know what I'm saying? I'm not giving anybody an excuse. But just look at what Allah Azza wa Jal is saying and look at it in today's time. I know a brother, not speaking on this stuff, man, but sitting down talking to him. He got in a very violent argument at a party. While he's arguing with the person, somebody hands him a sawed-off shotgun. He puts the sawed-off shotgun to the man's face while they're arguing at a party at this man's house. This man's mother and sister was there. And wallahi, he blows the man's head off in front of his mother and his sister at a whole party and takes off running. He tell me he don't even remember a pinch of it. He wake up in a cell covered in blood. Shirt, everything off. He just soaked in blood. They didn't even clean him up. He don't even know how long he been there. And when he wake up in the cell and screaming for the guards, what I'm in here for? Where does all this blood come from? Son, you in here for murder. You killed the man. So he trying to play all in his head. Now when he get his phone call, he's calling and everybody telling him what he did. But all of this was a decision that he made from a drunken stupor. So in return for what he did, and they couldn't get him because he was in jail, the guy he killed, little brother, went and did the same thing to his little brother. All off of alcohol, man. Intoxicants. And Allah Azza wa Jal, look at how many people just get super duper drunk and kill somebody in an accident and don't even remember it. Maybe even their own friend wrecked the car wickedly, and then they friend die instead of them. Off all these intoxicants, man. It's from the shaitan, man. So anyway, let's get into. So that's one of the ways. That's how you can study the Quran on a basic, general level. Look at your Meccan surahs. Look at your Madani surahs. Right? Daqeeq. Okay, so let me go back to something before I move on, because I was on that verse in Surah An-Nisa, and this will give you something. Hopefully, inshallah, doesn't confuse anybody. Right? When you look at the verses of wudu, when were they revealed? Was the verses of wudu revealed in Mecca, or were they revealed in Medina? Was there salah before the order of wudu that we have? When was that revealed? So when you get to studying the Quran, you can see this. And of course, there's debates between the scholars, because, and when they say the scholars, keep in mind, it does, like when you see something like that, sometimes they say the scholars, sometimes this doesn't distinguish whether they Sufi, Ash'ari, Maturidi, Salafi, one of the four Imams, modern day classicals, right? It doesn't necessarily distinguish, but some from particular groups, when they can't make sense of something and they don't really have that much dalil, they fill in the blanks. And that's why some groups say some of the things about some of the ridiculous stuff they say about Allah. But let me finish this ayat out and look what it says. Where it says, do not approach the prayer while intoxicated. I was explaining a little bit of it, but I should have just went on with it. Let me go with it. Until you are aware of what you say, nor in a state of full impurity, unless you merely pass through the mosque, right? If you're going through the masjid not praying, that's a different thing. Until you have took a bath, right? But if you are ill or on a journey or have relieved yourself or been intimate with your wives and cannot find water, then purify yourselves with clean earth, wiping your face and your hands. Now this is the tayammum. But before that, it's just a ghusl, not a wudu. It's a ghusl. This is in, let me read it again. O believers, do not approach prayer while intoxicated until you are aware of what you say, and don't approach the prayer unless you're in a full state of purity. If you're impure, unless you're merely passing through the masjid, until you have took a bath. So don't approach the prayer intoxicated, especially to the point where you don't know what you're saying, and if you're not in a state of purity. It's cool if you're walking through the masjid, but when you get ready to pray, make sure you're sober and make sure you take a bath. Unless you ill, where you can't take a bath, and if you're on a journey and there's not enough water around for you to take a bath, right? And of course, if you've been intimate with your spouse, because this is for male and female, then purify yourselves with clean earth, wiping your faces and your hands. I done seen people take the dirt and act like they doing a whole full voodoo just without their mouth and nose with it. This is before the verse of the voodoo we have. So look at the timeline. When did this come about? When did these commandments come about? And it'll start to give you a pretty picture of what the deen entailed. The way they prepared us for stages. Look at Surat al-Ma'idah. Because we was also in that where the prohibition came. So in Surat al-Ma'idah, which is also in Medina, which is after Surah Nisa. Look what it says. Surah ayah number 6. Purification before the Salah. O believers, when you rise up for prayer, wash your faces and your hands up to the elbows. Wipe your heads, now wash it, and wash the feet to the ankles. And if you are in a state of full impurity, then take a full bath. But if you are ill, on a journey, or have relieved yourselves, or have been intimate with your wives, and cannot find water, then purify yourselves with clean earth by wiping your faces and hands. So as you can see, it went from a ghusl to a wudu. SubhanAllah. Look at the mercy of Allah. Now, just these are side notes. That don't mean take a bath, a full complete bath 5 times a day. Unless you in that impure of a state, yes, you had to take 5 a day. But I'm not going to go too much into it because I don't want to confuse people who ain't ready for this conversation where it confuses them. But when you know how to study your Quran as opposed to reading it, and you see the mercy of Allah and how things was eased up to what we have now, we have it way easier than they had it be. We had it way easy. We got it way easier. You know, but that's one of the beauties of it. Go through and study the verses of Tayammun if you can find them. See if they're in Mecca, see if they're in Medina. Then when you look at the chronological order of Salah, so some scholars who don't know enough hadith to go with this and don't know enough athar, I hate saying that because I want people to understand, back in those days, some people were scholars, but they didn't have access to all of the dalil. Just like right now, I got the 6 mother books of hadith, but I have not read every last hadith in all of them. There's hadith that escapes me because I have them, but I haven't read them. You see what I'm saying? I think when I counted it up, it's almost like 38,000 hadith on this shelf. I haven't read all 38,000. I've read all the Bukhari, but I don't have to go into all of that. So sometimes there was things that they didn't see. So some scholars like, wait a minute, Salah came in then, but wudu, the verse of wudu was here, and then they may not have been a scholar of tafsir and hadith. They may have just been a scholar of the fiqh of the madhabs, so they studied the deen from the positions of the madhab. It's a lot to explain, but just try that. Go study the verses of Adkam. Like when I talk about the verses of Adkam versus the verses of Aqidah. I done did videos on that. Look at your ayahs on Aqidah, and then listen to what some of these people say about Allah, but they call themselves teaching Aqidah. Or like some things that people who publish books, and when you understand some of these people, they just went to different speeches of people or talks that people in the past, and then they take all their little sayings and translate them into one book, and they had this thing where teaching Aqidah, and they come up with all these Aqidah books, right? When And they just name it the Aqidah of Imam such and such, the Aqidah of such and such, such and such. And sometimes it was never a book. They just collected some of their sayings and they translated it into a book and called it the Aqidah of such and such, Aqidah of such and such. And then you will see individuals, because it has Aqidah on it, they might buy 15 books on Aqidah, Aqidah this one, Aqidah the Salaf, the Aqidah this, the Aqidah that, and they all say the exact same thing, when they could have spent more time studying the Aqidah verses of the Quran. They would have got further. They would have had a better understanding, because those 15 books ain't going to do nothing but say, well, Allah is. And they going to quote the same hadith, the slave girl, they going to quote the same thing, when in actuality, these things was really out there just to show that so many great imams was in the agreements of this thing. But then certain people just figured out, hey, we could put these and translate. We could turn this into 20 different books. We could turn them into 20 different books and sell them for $20 a piece. The 20-something people. 20,000 people. But individuals would have been better off studying the ayahs of Aqidah. And then when you go to study the ayahs of Adkam, like Salah, like Wudu, like Zakat, it'll change your whole perspective, because now you're studying the Quran and not just reading it. So look at the verses of Wudu and Tayammum. And when Salat came in, and look at the timeline, and like I just showed about the alcohol. Look how at one point what it says about alcohol in the beginning, when they was already loving a drink. And then look how it goes to the next one. And then to the next one. You'll really be like, wow, then, because then you're gonna say, there's no way a man could have wrote this. There's no way a man could have did this. Like you can with some of these other books. So it won't take me long, man, to touch this Bible thing, man. I didn't want to go that long, but Qarda of Allah, Masha'Fa'al. But just try it, and that's just one example. You know what I'm saying? Periodically, I might jump down and pick a subject matter and show how to study it from the Quran, and it's just on a basic level. Not saying you should come up with a ruling, not saying you should start putting hukums on people, you know, not start using it against your family, but this brings you to a better understanding, and it'll bring you to that wisdom, man, that hikmah, like, man, Allah, man, like, you'll start to have these wow moments. Some people, it might be a little confusing for them if they had a disease in their heart. Like, wait a minute, this is a contradiction. No, it's not. It's a timeline of the Deen of Islam being revealed over a course of 23 years is what it is. You know what I'm saying? You take your age, you take yourself, let's say we're going to say you 25, and you look at your life from the age of 15 to 25 and see how much growing and differences and changing and adjustments you had to do in your life. You know what I'm saying? This was a chronological timeline. And then when you know that certain ayats was dropped at particular times, but Allah had already had them written down. Imagine the people who reading this during the days of the Rasul, and they had something in their mind, and they had a plot, and they had a plan, and they know the Rasul don't know nothing about it. And then Allah reveals it to the Rasul in the Quran, and the Rasul come to recite these ayahs to them. These people are going to come ask you about this, and this, about gambling and about drinking, and then next thing you know, they walk up on you and be like, Rasul, when you look at the hadith, next thing you know, they walking up asking them about it. And Allah done already told them what to say. And then when they get their Quran, this same scenario, when the Quran is being revealed to them, it's in there. They reading this over again. That's making them more of a believer. But anyway, off of that. So the brother said that Zabur is, and we gonna do this because I don't have no Bible in here, man. No disrespect to it, but man, I would never have a Bible in my house, man, ever. Not even for educational purposes. So, and I had to say this. I talked about it before. Dakik. As a matter of fact, because of how long this is, I'm just going to put it in another video. So I'm going to stop this one and then we're going to go on with another video, inshallah. Any mistakes I made came from myself and the shaitan. Anything I said that was correct came from Allah Azza wa Jalla Muqtadir. And my apologies if I apologize, I confused anybody. But take that small tip on studying the Quran. Even if you just want to be like, okay, which some people do, and once you get in certain classes, some people do it this way. Go to your book, see how many surahs is Meccan surahs, and then read all of the Meccan surahs, and it'll give you a picture-perfect idea of what it was like for them in Mecca. Then switch over to all of the surahs that was revealed in Medina, and you'll start to see a lot of rules and regulations about family, how to deal with family, you know, how to practice Islam openly as opposed to being in persecution, how to tighten up more. You will start to see that in the Medina surahs. Then you will really say, wow. That's one of your first steps you could do. Go read all the Meccan surahs. When you get done with the Meccan surahs, read the Medina surahs. But then keep your notepad. Which one is talking about family and which one is talking about life? Which one is talking about laws of the land? You know, like how to treat, you know, how to deal with people and neighbors and this and that. How to deal with marriage, divorce, you know, orphans, stepchildren. Because stepchildren can fall under the category of an orphan. Because in Islam, technically, if an orphan is somebody that doesn't have a father. So you could be a stepfather, and in Islam, this child is considered to be an orphan. And you're the head of the household, but let's say, for instance, they inherited, their father passed away and they have an inheritance. Or they get child support check money for them. And then some women don't understand this because it applies to them. Some Muslim women feel like, although this is child support money, and it's supposed to be help with supporting the child, they feel like they could do whatever they want with the money. Get their hair done. You know what I'm saying? Because they might live somewhere where they don't have to pay any rent or any electric bills. You see what I'm saying? And their boyfriend might be buying a new kid's shoes. So, or either the stepfather might take the child support check and go hustle with it. You need to look at the Quran ayats on how to deal with the money that comes into the orphan. You know, I'm using child support, but these are things that people have to be careful with. When you go to look at your Quran ayats on dealing with orphans, what's an orphan in Islam, and this and that, zakat, this and this. Once you start to break down, you go from Mecca to Medina. This is the ways that you can study your Quran, and then you will be able to implement it more into your life. And then when you go through it that way, then you start being able to look at the hadith in accordance with those subject matters. What's the hadith on dealing with orphans? Let me go to the book of hadith on dealing with orphans or this subject matter. Let me go to the book of hadith on dealing with zakat, with this, being zati, with dealing with zud. Look at the recommendations for zud when you're looking at your Medina chapters. And then you'll be able to go look at them, look at those categories you put them in, and you look for those ayats in the Quran, then you're able to go look at the hadith with that subject matter. And once you're able to start doing that, you're going to be like, okay, I'm starting to get it now. This is the real deal. And then it'll start to set in here. Okay, this ain't nothing to play with. Like Abu Waist said, man, when you became Muslim, man, when you accepted this deen of Islam, you done grabbed a hold to the tail of a tiger. You got to be careful. You got to hold on to that tail just right and move with it to not get attacked. But you know, once that tail comes from up out of your hands, you're going to get devoured. You're going to be like, okay, this is the real deal. I see this different now. And then this is going to quiet out all the noise from this person like I had on the board, from this person who came after the Rasul, him coming after the Rasul. Just like I showed, man, one of my guys, man, well, one of the guys, because we be discussing a lot of, not a lot, but, little stuff with the madhabs and these groups and all this and that. And I was showing him, I like when he showed me a subject matter or something and it being a deen, and then I like to show him little bits and pieces of how it got twisted up from the past. So I was showing him when we was discussing certain things about using fake stories and lies in the deen of Islam as long as it supposedly has a good message, right? But to see how they use that and it got twisted up to kind of, sometimes fake stories change the narrative of the deen, right? So we was talking about it before, and then something got brought up, and then I went and showed him how the couple of madhabs, which one madhab that I knew of said it was okay to do, the Hanafi madhab. The other ones wasn't with it, but how I showed in the Shafi'i madhab how people from these particular groups of these imams, how they became scholars of the Shafi'i madhab and these other madhabs, and then they made it permissible. So sometimes when you think something is from the Shafi'i madhab, the Hanbali madhab, the Hanafi madhab, right, the Maliki madhab, it don't be from those imams. It be from somebody who became a scholar of that madhab 400 years later, 300 years later, 500 years later, and it was something that they felt or they thought, or they pushing the agenda from the person who I had on the board where I said he's the tree, but all these people was branches of him and they became imams and scholars of those madhabs. They changed it, and then they can hide behind their thought process, and now 400 years, they did it 400 years after Imam Malik, Shafi, and this and that. And now another 500 years done passed, and now it's done reached us. And we think it's from the madhab when it isn't. So, I showed him and showed him a person and showed him, look, these people did that. They changed it. And like right now, the way Google is, and it with AI, and it pulls up anything that's basically the main articles about something that has been put on the internet, it pulls all those resources up, and then it'll pull like the one that had the most click, the most views. So it's not always accurate, but it do have accurate stuff in there, and it'll show you on there. And like when you haven't went through some of the processes and fiqh and things like that, or you don't have all these books or these huge libraries, some people just not going to be aware of that stuff, man. So they changed it. You know what I'm saying? And then some people who just on a low level, who've been taught, you got to be from these madhabs to be a Sunni Muslim, or you have to have one of these madhabs. That's the only way you can follow Islam properly. But they've never been taught that madhab. They just know how to parrot those sayings. And then you point something out to them, and they don't even know it. Just like something from the Hanafi madhab. Did y'all know that in the Hanafi madhab, You know, like some of the foreigners or before time they was into arranged marriages. Do you know that in the Hanafi madhab, if a person skin color was too dark, basically they too black. If you get an arranged marriage with a Muslim male or a Muslim female, and they was dark, basically they were black. Didn't matter if they was Mu'min, didn't matter if they was a Muslim. You know what I'm saying? Didn't matter if they was a person of Jannah. Because their skin was black, that was grounds for a divorce. A woman can get an automatic cooler just because they arranged a marriage for her and a black person. In a Hanafi madhab. Where is that from Quran and Sunnah? Where is that grounds for a cooler for a woman or a talaq for a man in Islam? But it's cool in the Hanafi madhab. And then according to us domesticated Muslims, hey, it's in the madhab, so whatever is in the madhab is all permissible. But we know that go against Quran and Sunnah. Divorcing somebody because they black. And there's more things like that. Yes, that is racism. Solely for the color of their skin. And you determine what's too black. So I'm not saying a black American because there was no black Americans at that time. So I'm not saying racism towards black Americans, but we know during that time there was racism towards people with black skin. You can listen to it in some of the speeches from the Rasul and some of the companions being disciplined. Not a physical discipline, but the Rasul putting them in a square because they saying things like, you the son of a black woman. You know what I'm saying? Boy, you ain't nothing but an N-I-double-G-G-E-R. Basically, you ain't nothing but an N-I-double-G-G-E-R. You ain't your mama. So, that stuff is in the madhab, man. Yeah. Yes, it's in there. When you know the madhab from beginning to end and to go look at it, that's racism. Where's that from the Sunnah? No knock or no diss to the imams, but this is just the truth. Just like it's permissible to drink wine as long as it's from natural sources, like honey and fruits and stuff. It's in the madhab, man. How it end up there? But we talking about when you go all the way back to the original writings. Anyway, man, that's enough of that, man. Anything I said that was incorrect came from myself and the shaitan, slips of the tongue and all of that. And anything I said that was correct came from Allah Azza wa Jalla Muqtadiyar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.